Thank you for taking a minute out for the show today. I appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate your time as well.
Yeah. So before we get into your work, I want to know, I know we're all getting a little tired about this, talking about this pandemic, but it was such a big deal for all of us to survive. It changed so much. So ultimately, how did you get through that time period, and how has it changed the way that you live your life now?
Um, well, really, I got sick with COVID very early on. I like to say I got it before it was cool. I got it right around March 19th of 2020, and it knocked me out of work for about 2.5 weeks. I was pretty sick. My daughter was in first grade at the time, and she was being homeschooled. So I had to take care of her homework, and then we had to get to noon every day, and then from that I slept from noon to 4, got up for dinner, and then went back to bed. I was so exhausted. So, um, but in that time, in that 2.5 weeks, I was pretty much isolated up in my bedroom, and that's when I kind of refound some of the creative stuff that I had done earlier in my life. I was a musician. I used to be in a band. I had my wife bring up my guitar at one point, and I just kind of started going through some of the old songs we used to play and teaching myself some new stuff. So it was it kind of reawakened a lot of creativity for me.
So you've had quite a career in law enforcement and your writing, and as you mentioned, all the creative pursuits. But if I put you right now in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids was curious and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Well, right now, again, I've been in law enforcement for 18 years, so I've kind of got some seniority on. I'm currently the rank of sergeant, and I've been that rank for nearly 10 years. So I kind of do administrative stuff now. So I'm not out necessarily doing hunting down bad guys and working cases. I'm kind of more fighting the battles internally and trying to get new computer programs and trying to get new equipment for our guys so that they can operate on a daily basis. So which takes a lot of creativity too. There's a lot of creative writing and writing grants, and there's a lot of creativity in coming up with arguments and talking to politicians and trying to get things done through government. So that's kind of what I do. I'm a very collaborative also,
Yeah.
where I try to build a lot of bridges between myself, um, the people above me, my organization, and people below me, my organization, and then all the partners that you need in order to accomplish things, which I really translated into my creative pursuits when I'm building the team. You don't just write a book and magically it comes out. You need a lot of people that you need to build relationships with that you have to trust,
Yeah.
that are going to edit your book, design a cover for your book, proofread your book, so that you're not blind to what's going on. So that's kind of what I do right now.
So what was your dream when you were in the third grade? Was it always law enforcement?
Ironically, yes. I think if I go back to the creative stuff that you do, like, yeah, oh, write a story, and they give you. I was in third grade in the mid '90s, early '90s.
Yeah.
They give you like the hardcover book, and it would be just blank inside. And I'm like, oh, write your final draft right in here. And I remember writing, I think it was in third grade, about the author, and it said someday he wants to be a New York City police officer. So I didn't end up in NYPD, but ironically, in third grade, I did want to get in law enforcement. Took
Yeah.
a little detour for a little while, but yeah, ironically, yeah, in third grade, that's what I wanted to do.
So what was your favorite book growing up? What was kind of a go-to book for you?
Um, Early in my life, I used to reread the same books over and over again. I found that when I liked something, I read it multiple times because I wanted to dissect it. I really liked, as a young kid, I liked Super Fudge by
Yeah.
Judy Blume.
Yeah.
Um, I actually have never read the first book, the Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing. I've actually never read that, but I've read Super Fudge multiple times.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that book growing up. And then as I got older, I was always into Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
I had a collection. And my mom used to read those to me before I was old enough. Um, and then as I got through high school and stuff, I started getting more into um, more contemporary novels. And then in college, I became a huge, I was a literature major, English major, and I got really into the expatriate writers like Hemingway
Yeah.
and William Faulkner and I have Scott Fitzgerald, and I read that stuff nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah. So take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised. What were the foundational pieces? You have a really good mix of right and left brain with law enforcement and music and writing and all these things. What were the foundational seeds that were planted in you early on that grew into who you are?
It's a very interesting question. I was born and raised in Albany County, New York. I think it was really my mom was always very supportive of my creative pursuits, but my dad was also very practical. He was a pipe fitter, a welder. He worked with his hands. He built things. So it was just kind of the practical side of needing to accomplish something, but the creative side of how do we do it and come on with a good idea, and just kind of having those two mixes of things. I was never very good at math. I liked science, but it wasn't really a deep thing. I always liked history, and I always liked literature. I always liked reading. I always liked stories. So it's just in which I think that's the practical side of law enforcement is basically you're a historian. You're
Yeah.
going out there every day and experiencing what's happening with folks. So and again, sometimes it's on the worst day of their life, and you have to write down as factually as you can, but also telling that story to so that somebody reading it, 10 years from now, can understand it. Because you do a criminal case, it can take 5 or 6 years sometimes for that case to go, depending on things. And sometimes you have to go back and you have to read that stuff. So foundationally, just kind of having the practical nature of establishing what needs to be done, and then finding a good way to do it.
So, after all of these years of being in law enforcement, you get to see things that we get fictionalized on TV that we have no idea. But ultimately, it's heavy things that show the bottom of humanity and how bad things can get. After all of these years, have you lost faith in humanity or is it strengthened?
Oh, very much strengthened. I've seen in my position, and I've been very fortunate that my experience in law enforcement has been more of the paper type crimes. I do a lot. I dealt with a lot of fraud, and financial type crimes, as well as computer stuff when I was an investigator. Um, and again, a police officer, fictionalized. They're always dealing with crime.
Yeah.
They're always dealing with these big things, and more we're dealing with the day to day. Somebody gets into an accident. You need to process that accident so that the motorists can go to their insurance companies. And being able to accurately describe that. It's you know so it's not really seeing always the worst of humanity. Sometimes you
Right.
see the good things. Sometimes you just see it's very mundane, day to day, and it's punctuated by these small instances of action of just I worked midnights for 3.5 years as a supervisor, and there were weeks nothing happened.
Yeah.
And upstate New York in the dark, you're just driving around, you're checking to make sure nothing's out of the ordinary, and then like once every 3 weeks something would happen.
Yeah.
And I always said, if a domestic happens at 2 o'clock in the morning, people woke up to have that fight. It's not just an argument. It's usually a lot more serious. So when we had to go to those things, you really get to see how people treat one another
Yeah.
and get to the bottom of what's going on. So really, I don't want to say it's been totally boring, but I haven't had that big thing happen to me to really kind of take that wind out of my sails.
So who's been a hero? Who's been an inspiration for you in your work?
Um, Professionally, I have a number of supervisors, who I looked up to, who kind of um, taught me how to survive in this business. both mentally, physically, and emotionally. But really, more and more, and this is kind of where my book comes into play is um, my father was really my hero. He was a very, very complicated person, but he acted so simply. His favorite song is Leonard Skinner's "Simple Man," and that's who he was. But really, he was so much more complicated in his history. The relationship he had with my mother, they had marital issues when I was a teenager. And then when I went to college, I lived with him for a little while. Then my parents got back together and they were starting to really rebuild their relationship and getting along when my mom unfortunately passed from cancer. And then he had to be alone for the first time, and you just get to really see a lot of humanity in him, and understanding that. And this not really understanding my father is kind of where one of the major themes I put into my book
Yeah.
was the main character is trying to understand a father he never knew. And while I may not be in the same boat as him, it was just trying to get to the bottom what his life was all about.
So if you can meet anybody alive, whether it's a writer or a creative or someone that you admire that's alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would that be?
I think right now, I would really like to have a sit down conversation with Andrew Clavin. He's a writer, a podcaster. He's a conservative, but he's also realistic, and he's seen kind of both worlds, and he's come through a lot in his life, and he's very smart. I listen to his podcast. I'm a big podcast person. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and he has his weekly thing, and I feel like we're having a conversation because he'll say something. I'm like, yeah, I totally agree, or I don't think so. And I would love to have a conversation with Andrew Clavin.
So obviously he's somebody that's very disciplined and has a very clear vision of what he wants to do and what he wants to convey. What is that for you? What gets you out of bed every day to do the work that you do in law enforcement, to be a writer, and to evolve as a human being? What is that gumption for you?
I do it right now for my family. I have a 10-year-old daughter. I want her to see that you get up every day and you just keep moving and you try to accomplish things. I'm coaching her a lot right now in a couple of sports. Um, and I see her get frustrated at things, and she doesn't want to hear the dad advice, but um, me getting up every day shows, getting up every day and going to work and doing those things shows her that that's how you do. You don't get frustrated and lay in bed all day. You don't get, you don't suffer a setback and close yourself in. You have to keep moving. There are bad days in law enforcement. I've experienced very few of them, but there are days when you're just like, I don't want to go in the next day, and you kind of got to force yourself. Or you know, writing over the last 2 years to try to get this project done, there are days when I'm not one to go back and reread what I written at the same at the time that I wrote it. So I'll go back and you just get this feeling like, oh, this is terrible, and it's like I just want to change everything. I want to throw it out, and I tell myself, listen, you're not in the right mindset right now. You need to walk away and give it some time to breathe. And we were in the backyard last night, my daughter and I. She's playing volleyball, and she's trying to learn how to serve underhand, and she kept messing it up. And I said, and she was getting frustrated and angry, and she just wanted to keep doing it. I said, no, you need to step back and think about what you're doing. I said, let's do something else for a little bit. Get your mind off of it, and then we'll go back, and you'll be more clear minded. So I think that's what I'm trying to accomplish at this point in my life is just be a good role model for my daughter, be a good husband for my wife to take care of all the things that need to get taken care of so that she doesn't need to worry about them also.
So speaking of youth, the beauty of getting older is that we have that rear view mirror and we can look back and we have some level of clarity. let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
I would tell him, I would tell him to just be the bigger person in every situation. Um, and there's a lot of times, the younger me would get embarrassed or be shy about things, and I would run away, or I wouldn't pursue something because it was difficult, or I felt like I was going to be um, shunned in a certain way, and I wouldn't speak up, or I wouldn't express my opinion, or it just kind of being assertive, um, and to tell myself, develop those skills, be assertive, because if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else is going to do it for you. And sometimes you just kind of got to let it all hang out there. Um, I'm a self-published writer now,
Yeah.
and I didn't wait for somebody to read my book and say, this is good, and we're going to publish it for you. I took that on myself, and I think the do it yourself method. I would tell that younger self, just do it yourself. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family, and just keep moving forward.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I ever gotten, and again, my dad. Early is on time is late, and late is not acceptable. So I would say that's the Carpentier family motto. If we had a crest, that would be across it, and it's more than just punctuality. It's being prepared. If you're early to something, you're thinking ahead and trying to say, what do I need to be doing right now? Because if you're on time, you're late. Something could already be past you,
Yeah.
and late is just not acceptable. Because if you're late to the game, you're not going to have any success. So I live by that. I tell the guys that work for me that. I tell my daughter that constantly, and she'll repeat it back. Um, that's one, and one A would be also my father. Uh, Before I got into law enforcement, I was working construction with him, and I was not very good at it. Again, I'm not good with my hands like that, not or at least not as good as he was.
Right.
And we were working in the winter in the mountains, laying a pipeline from a quarry down to a cement plant. And after working with him for 5 or 6 months, I walked into his house, and he looked at me. He goes, "Listen, boy, every day that you're here past a year, I'm going to smack you in the face every time I see you." And it was kind of, you need to get your stuff together, because this isn't what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
If it's a temporary thing, I was newly married at the time. I just needed a job to make a salary, have some insurance, that kind of stuff. I think he understood that, but he's like, this isn't you.
Yeah.
And um, you need to get your butt moving, and moving forward again, and being prepared for the next level of life.
Yeah.
So,
My dad was born in Brooklyn. He was actually raised in Long Island and joined the military and came to Kansas City. And he was a car salesman for years. And I used to go in, and he was wonderful at it, man. I mean, he could just spin a yarn and get someone to get into the car, and it was magical to watch him. But when his buddies would say something to me like, "Hey, do you want to grow up and do this one day?" My dad would always say, "He's not going to be a dummy like me. He's going to go to school and do something different." And as much as it hurt me when I was a kid, he was just setting me up for just seeing things in a different way, because I mean, it's a struggle when you do things like sales, and when the economy goes up and down, it's a hard
oh
deal.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, it's sometimes those moments, man, you don't realize when they're happening how much
yep,
they'll resound and echo in your life.
absolutely. And again, the father character in the book isn't my dad, but there's so many of the little things that were him in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's a very different character, but it's also very much the same. And um, it's only more recently, he passed away 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's only kind of in that absence that I really understand how important he was.
Yeah.
Despite all the difficulties that we had interpersonally at times, which, that might be a father-son thing in general, but, his intentions are always good.
Yeah.
And, when you're young, you don't necessarily see them,
Yeah.
and you find yourself, you know, missing that. And there's so many things I would love to talk to my dad about now.
Yeah.
And, I won't have that opportunity.
Yeah. So, of everything that you've done and accomplished and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
I am proudest of the family and the family life that I built. For me, that's the most important thing. Um, uh, I've had immense success in my professional life. I've had a great career. My wife has had a great career, and we've always kind of remained supportive of one another. And we waited about 10 years to have our first child, and we've really poured ourselves into that. So it's just the best thing in my life is having a family, having someone to come home to, having somebody that supports you. I mean, maybe not no matter what, maybe will give you the honest feedback that you need, um, but at the same time support you. Like, we got into an argument last week about something I dropped the ball on, and her thing was, oh, you're always focused on the book, because that's taking so much of my time right now. Just released it 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, and oh, if you had time for your book, you would have had time for this, and that hurt at the time, but also kind of made it was a little bit of a wake up call to say, you know what, you know I'm not following through. And I guess, you go back to, what would you tell your 18-year-old self is, listen to your wife, because
Yeah.
she's, the happier she is, the happier you will be.
Yeah, for sure. So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that buys your book, everyone that works with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I like to think of myself as just very personable.
Yeah.
I just try to have good conversations with everybody. I try to understand people and where they're coming from. Now it's kind of become my leadership style. Um, and just, again, that collaboration. I don't want to do things on my own. I'm not necessarily that I'm afraid of it, but just I know more answers and more things will come out if you're collaborating with somebody. If somebody else is giving you feedback and you're able to bounce that stuff back and forth with each other. Like I said, in my marriage, that's what we do. My wife will give an idea and I'll listen to her and I'll listen to her, and then I'll bounce something back at her, or I'll have an idea, and just being able to accomplish that at the family level. Now with the position I'm at with my agency, I'm a sergeant, but I work very closely with the chief and the captain, who are both people I came up with. We started roughly the same level, and now they're my bosses. But it's all about the collaboration, because we're all trying to get to the same point. Same thing with finding people with the book. They want to help me get this book to the best part it will be. And as much as I may not believe in it at times, it's someone else is there to back you up, and having that in your life.
So, if anyone wants to pick up your book, they want to learn more, reach out, any of the good business, where can they go?
Right now I have my website, rlcarpentierwriter.com. It is available over at Amazon, but obviously I'm trying to push everybody to the website and buy it directly from me. I will personalize it. I will sign it. I got a couple little extras that get thrown in every book. And That's what it looks like. If you're out there looking for it, it's called Our Lady of the Overlook. It's a small town mystery. Takes place in the Catskill Mountains. First of what I'm planning to be a trilogy. So hopefully get some people interested in this one. About midway through the second book right now. So maybe summer, early fall, I'll have that out, and we'll keep moving forward with that stuff.
Right on. Rodney, this has been great. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
I
Best of luck
appreciate your
with the
time, John.
release. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.